and thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, talking all things leadership. And this month, we are talking about self-awareness. So the simple leadership method has 6 components, the first of which is self-awareness, the S in simple: intentionality, mastery, purposefulness, leverage, and energy. Those are the 6 components. We are talking about self-awareness this month. We'll talk about what's happening in the news. We've got a book club episode that we do on the 4th Thursday of the month, and an interview that will be happening in the middle of the month. And so all related to self-awareness. So today we're going to be not only talking about self-awareness, but some of our own lessons in self-awareness from a recent project that we did for a client. And we had our clients, the attendees of this training that we did, working with the concept of self-awareness and doing some values assessments. And the beautiful thing about life, I guess, it's an easy way to put it. The beautiful thing about life is if you are paying attention, every experience that you have is an opportunity for you to learn and grow. There's an opportunity for you to tap into use your self-awareness about what's going on with you in the midst of an experience. And you get to share that with other people as lessons learned, helping them grow as well. So that's what we're doing today. And Robert, opening thoughts on this.
Well,
this was your idea, by the way.
What was that?
I said this was your idea, by the way.
What was my idea?
Give credit where credit's due.
Well, first of all, I want to just show some appreciation for this project that we did together, the workshop. It was phenomenal working with those folks. What a great group of people. I think the interesting thing that you and I know this because this is our work, right? Is that there's a phrase that we use in the work that we do, and they also use it in social work and psychology, use of self, right? Yeah. And it's really, when you have a client, and this is really interesting, the emotions that you feel when you're working with that client are probably the emotions that other people that are led by them feel. And so it's always important to bring it up. I just want to point that out. But one of the things that I noticed when we did this is 2 things. An appreciation for the, of the participants, toward us when we're like, okay, what did you notice about yourself? Because they didn't get it, they didn't see the opportunity to do that in their daily lives. And we're like, well, you have permission to do that. That was one thing. And the other thing, it was that, when we first asked the question, there was like the screech of brakes that hit because people, they were so busy working on the tasks that we gave them, that they were so focused on the other person. They weren't paying attention to that feedback. How am I reacting? What's happening inside me? What am I becoming aware of right now in the moment? And there's always that opportunity to do that. And it's a skill, and we encourage them to cultivate that skill.
Yeah. So just like a half a step back to provide a little context. So we were a part of a 2-day program. Robert and I did a piece on day 1. I worked with another facilitator on day 2. The overarching theme was to help the attendees with their ability to lead better, and in particular in their ability to coach others. And so, disclaimer, I am not a coach's not a trainer of coaches,
I'm
right?
not a mentor coach.
Not a trainer coach, and weren't asked to do that, but to provide some tools and some strategies to help a group of leaders, right, to coach their people, to be better coaches for their people. And certainly Robert and I come from a place where we believe that leaders as coaches is important, right? That and I have what I call a three-legged stool of employee development. It's coaching, mentoring, and training, right? You need all three. You're not going to just have someone come and work for you and train them to simply do the job that they have, and not look at them as a whole person and in a broader context. We've talked at multiple episodes about companies not investing in their employees, right? And you can read articles day after day of the mismatch between what employees want and what employers or companies are, and not that what they want, but more what they are offering or what they are willing to invest in their employees, and that mismatch creates some problems. And so the beautiful thing about this group is that their employers were investing in them. That's why they were there. But at the same time, while they were working for employers that have invested in them, they really hadn't taken the time to sort of invest in themselves, right? And it's a two-part process. Your career is your business. It is your responsibility. And it's one thing to ask your employer to invest in you, to develop you, but if you don't take the steps to do the actual work, right, you can have the best employer in the world, right? And so some of what we encountered were people that hadn't given themselves, as Robert said, given themselves permission to ask lots of questions, starting with the very foundational ones of, what do I want? What's my vision? What am I moving towards? And what do I need to know about myself and where I am right now so that I can bridge the gap to get from where I am to where I want to go? Right. So all of us have to ask that question. And for me, I would say that while I feel like I ask these questions of myself all the time, actually doing the exercise with them and preparing for our work with them had me rethinking this, right? And thinking, maybe I hadn't put as much time recently in asking these questions of myself.
Yeah, this takes me back to a moment when we were in grad school. I don't know if you remember this, and we were at a workshop, and one of the facilitators raised a question about values, and there were quite a few of us, myself included, who were stuck. And the teacher was like, "Well, you need to do more values work." And I was like, "Listen, listen here, Professor Lady. we're working, we're working, but you do need to." But she was right. You need to set aside that time. And most of us, I'm going to include us in this too. We're in the daily grind, and more so when you work for we're not entrepreneurs. We work for ourselves. But when you work for an organization and they're calling the shots,
Yeah.
the moment you punch in, I'm dating myself. The moment you clock in, right? The moment you get to work, right? I'm dating myself. The moment you get to work, it's like you turn over agency to them in a sense. And you are doing whatever tasks are given to you, and you should. I'm not saying you should, but there should always be some moments in there to take some time and think about, your values and what's going on inside yourself, to be self-aware.
Yeah.
It can be hard to do that. I think the generations in work now, the younger generations are well ahead of where we were
True.
when it comes to that, because we came out of that. Our parents were like, you get a job, and you get a job, they plug you in, and you work until you die. That was, that was the philosophy, you right? Or you work until you retire, and then you die. You don't have any thinking unless you were the boss. You just got in, and they plugged you in, and you did the same job. You didn't ask for promotion. You got promoted if you did that job really well,
Yeah.
maybe, and then you continue to do that, and it was completely out of your hands whether or not you got the promotion or whether or not you were forward. And so it's almost like this. I don't want to use the word, but I'm going to use it. Mindless,
Yeah. There's a little bit of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
going in there and doing that. And that was part of the contract, right? I'm going to go in and do this job mindlessly, and I'm being, I'm not being insulting with that. I'm going to do this job and not question you. I'm going to be loyal to you, and you're going to take care of me.
Yes.
Right. And well, a lot of that is gone, but there are some people that still function with that kind of thinking. And I think that that's being turned around a little bit by the newer, younger generation that's coming in. But we saw some of that.
No,
And
absolutely.
but we also saw that other slice where there were some younger people in that group that were like, hey, I'm on top of this. Right? Yeah, I know what my values are. And this was really funny because one of the participants was really keen on, I missed the pre-work and I need to get that. Can I get that during lunch? Right? When probably people of my generation have been like, yeah, I'm doing okay.
No, I love that. And I got a couple of emails about that and some afterwards, just the encouragement to take a look within, right? To have some awareness around not only what your values are, but whether or not you're living those values, right? Because in the end, regardless of what you say, this goes for individuals and companies, organizations, right? Regardless of what you say, or regardless of what you espouse, your actions really tell the tale of what your true values are, right? And so you can be off base for a little while, right? That things happen and we get knocked around and we may act out of character, out of value for a while. But if it persists, then you have to really ask the question, is what I think are my values, are those really my values? Or is this thing that I'm doing habitually, regularly, daily, right? Or is this my value? And if it is this the value that I want to be living? In which case you have to make some changes, which was the whole point of what we were doing there, right? In the context of helping them to be better coaches for their people, looking at this within themselves so that they could help their employees do the same in the other contexts. And so while doing that and creating and refining the exercises, it became necessary to do that inward looking. And as I was doing that, I was asking, looking sort of at a history, are the values that the last time I really did some values work, are they the same as they were then? Because the reality is that your values can change, and that's okay, right? I think some of what happens for us is that we think that it's rigid and this is what I value. And so I must always value this. Life changes, things change, circumstances change. And I would say this, and it's one of the stories that I think I shared in another session. And we were talking about this, exactly this, of values changing. And when I went to law school, my number one value was, I would say family, but it was my son, right? When I started law school, my son was 8 years old. And throughout law school, so from 8 to 12, I was in school. I had been divorced. I had joint custody with my ex-husband. We managed to work to a custody arrangement or a time arrangement that allowed me to absolutely put my son first. When he was with me, when he was with his father, I could focus on school, right? And I structured my days. I worked full time while I was in law school, was a single mother, and, trying to manage my time so that my highest priority and what I valued most, my relationship with my son, didn't suffer as I was trying to make a better way for us, right? Make a better life for us by getting through law school and then improving my employability. I'll just put it that way. And so obviously, I'm not in law school. And my son is not part of the equation at this point in my life where I have to navigate such things, right? And so that's a shift. And I was just conveying the message that those things are okay, right? You don't hang on to something that is no longer necessary or that you find doesn't serve you in your personal life or in your role as a leader.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking about, and of course, I say a lot of stuff. You know how I am about the science, but I say a lot of stuff that makes no sense sometimes too, right? But I think this kind of does. And maybe when you have a major life change, a major life event, it's probably a great opportunity to check your values.
Yeah.
Because I think about myself when I was a kid, and I'm a musician, and that was my vocation and passion for many, many years. And growing up was like, that was, the value was getting chicks, right? Making money, whatever that was, whatever the typical, rock and roll things. And then, when that was, the sun was setting on that, they're having a party out there, so you may hear some of that.
Oh, okay.
When that was setting, and it was like, it's time for me to go to a different phase in my life and do something different, my values changed. It was like, I'm not, it became more about knowledge and education, even though it was still going on when I was doing the music thing, because, I'm a trained musician and I was always big on the theory and all that stuff. But it became more of an emphasis on that. And then, and certainly after, I think the last time I did a values assessment was when I went on my own as a business owner. Was like, let me check my values. And I went through that again, and that was eye-opening, because I was like, are they the same? No, they kind of are, but they're not. Like, all of a sudden, finances real tough. Right? It's like, that's what's important now, and that's okay. It's going to change, and this also ties into the work that we do with organizations. And I've worked with organizations that, I'm telling you, they've had the same mission and vision and core values for decades, and I'm like, you are not even the same organization,
right? Right.
You're not the same organization. And by the way, people, you weren't that organization when you created them. So you need to look at that stuff. And I have to tell you, it was like telling somebody their baby was ugly. And I mentioned that to them. I was like, you guys have the wrong value discipline, and they were like, what? We paid a lot of money to get this done. But you need to look at that stuff, because it's not immutable.
Right. And it's interesting talking about organizations. I was listening to the daily, one of my meditation apps is Calm, and Jay Shetty has a feature in the Calm app called the Daily J, and his discussion today before the meditation was, sort of this along this line. It was about obstacles, right? And how obstacles create these opportunities for us to learn and grow. And he tells the story, and I haven't done independent research on this, so I don't know all the details. All I can say, share, is what I understood him to say. So if you know, Robert, more details, feel free to correct me. And you in the audience, if you know a deeper story about this, absolutely weigh in and offer up a correction. But what I understand is that talking about shifting and values and not being the company that you were when you started, is that Twitter was founded to be like a podcast search tool. And then when Apple came along, sort of upended that, and they pivoted to become something else. Now, I didn't go and look, because I didn't know I was going to talk about that right now. So I didn't go look up whether or not they went and changed their mission and their vision and their value statements around who they were, or if who they became, or what Twitter became before its most current iteration, I'm going to say, right? Before it came that, if there were any modifications to any of that, or if what they became fit under what they had. I don't know. But I thought it was interesting that there was this whole pivot. And certainly if you find yourself in life or in your leadership journey having to make a pivot, it's like Robert said, it's a perfect time to check in with your values. All right, check in and make sure that what is guiding you is the appropriate thing to guide you in the new space or in the new direction.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't know that story about Twitter. But now
I'm good. Then you won't correct me. Doesn't mean somebody else will.
But now I'm morbidly curious about it, and I got me, I gotta go find it out. But it's interesting, and like organizations, people hopefully mature.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not the same person that I was back when I was doing music a lot, because I was just like just the things that I would focus on were like, I think now it's like going, yeah, I don't want to think about that, right? It's almost embarrassing. Not that I did embarrassing things, but just the narrow focus and not including anything else. And it's a weird thing, a little side journey. Some musicians I know, it's like being a musician is like this ultimate calling. It's like, and everything else is like, you're not a full-time musician, but yeah, you're doing art for a living, but you're not making any money. You're not really making the living, right? So it's that kind of thinking. And when you get older, when I got older, at least, I had an appreciation for the people that were like, didn't do music, went some place, because now I work with those people. I work with those people that focused on research, or they focused on business, and they focused on helping organizations, from the inside, be better. Or maybe they always wanted to work at General Electric, or they always wanted to, that was their goal. And I got a much greater appreciation of that when I got older, and I noticed that my values shifted. And that's my dog running. Sorry, my values shifted, and so it's okay to allow yourself to do that.
Yeah.
Hopefully that shows some growth. It would be, and it goes in the, and look, that's why people have midlife crisis. They go the other way, right? Their values shift because of a life event, and they put other things, at the top of that values list.
Yeah.
I hope that you've seen me put more important, I don't want to say important, things that are substantial, on top of that list.
No, I would say that over the course of the 10 years, almost 10 years that we've known each other, I can see a shift in how what you value and how you show up, right? As a result of what you value. And that is the thing that ultimately you want. You want to make sure that how you're showing up, right, is in alignment with your values. Otherwise, if there's a mismatch, right, if there's a disconnect, it's incongruent, and you're saying one thing and you're acting in another way, particularly with your team. I'm going to say both. With yourself, you're going to have, that discord is going to create issues with you, right? You may choose to ignore them, but I'm going to say it will show up, and I'm using suffering in a universal way, right? And you're wondering why things aren't working, why you're struggling and working so hard. That struggle and that suffering. Look at your values. Look at what your values are and your priorities, and how you are or are not in alignment with them. If you get them in alignment, things will flow much more easily. But the other side of that is how you're showing up with your team. And if there's an incongruency there, they're going to see it. It's going to make it difficult for you to communicate with them because they're not listening to you because you're saying one thing and doing something else. And then they can't trust you, right?
Yes.
And so all of that, this is why it's so important for you to have self-awareness about your values and how you're showing up, because it's impacting other people and it's having an effect on whether or not you can be open with them, honest, transparent, right? Whether or not they're going to agree with you, trust you, and the like. And if those things are not happening, they can't happen, and you don't have trust, you can't create the team that you need. Again, it goes back to, what is your vision? What are you working towards? What are you trying to create and make happen? And so all of these pieces work together. And the more you're paying attention to who you are, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, how you're showing up, etc., your values, the better off you'll be. A better you allows you to be a better leader.
And we're really talking about how you show up, right? And your values being your North Star to really a major part of how you show up. And one of the things that we all need to remember, and you said this, is that to build trust, you need to have consistency. Consistency builds trust. Think about a friend that you have that is not consistent, that says, I'll be there at 4 o'clock, and they come rolling up at 5:30. And, or then the next time they show up on time, and you're like, okay, this is great. And then it happens after that again. Well, now you're in a situation where it's almost better if they were consistently late, then you could plan for that. But then
Right.
They're late, then they show up on time, and then they're late again. Now you're in this like, what's gonna happen? That's how people are when you don't show up according to your values. And I think you talked about this really, really eloquently in an earlier episode when you said about the brain. We're talking about the brain. The brain does not like to work hard. It does a lot of stuff for us. And when that external stuff starts happening, your brain is like, I cannot deal with this. This person goes into this category. That's what we do, because your brain likes consistency. Your brain likes efficiency. And so it's always really important to remember that as leaders, when you want to build trust, be consistent. Reliability is huge.
And when you act outside of that, to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
right? Things happen, and you are in your role as an organizational leader. You are impacted by external forces and influences that you have no control over, but you need to be able to communicate that. And so when it happens, you're open and transparent, right? If you have built a relationship with your team so that they will trust you and hear what you're saying, then you can help them to be flexible in the matter.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not that everything has to be exactly the same all the time. Flexibility is a necessity, and adaptability, all of that, but it's difficult to get that from people if they don't know what to expect from you, because you don't know you don't know how you're going to show up. And so let's talk a little bit about some of the ways that we show up, right? And communication. And I had opportunity to talk about this in trainings that I do with leaders all the time. Communication has basically two parts, right? There's a verbal aspect of your communication and a nonverbal aspect. Your words are important, but they're only about 7%
Right.
of your communication. The other 93% is your physicality. It's how you're showing up, right? With your body language, which may be conscious or unconscious on your part, right? So the things that you're paying attention to, and then those things, maybe there are ticks or quirks about you that you don't know. They're sending all of this stuff is sending messages. Is all sending messages, right? And so the question you're asking is what messages am I sending by the way I show up physically, by the way I show up spiritually or emotionally, right? And am I saying one thing and then my physicality is showing up, displaying in a whole other way that's not in alignment with them, right? Is it there's a word that I'm looking for, it escapes me, doesn't matter. But paying attention to that, your tone, your facial expressions, your body language, all of your mannerisms, gestures, all of that is important, whether or not you are loud or boisterous, or if you are more reserved and withdrawn, right? People are paying attention to that, and they are coming to conclusions, right or wrong, about who you are. And so, are you aware of the messages that you're sending? And it's important for you to not just the values part of you, but this physicality and how you show up, how you're communicating both verbally and non-verbally.
Yeah, resonant and dissonant communication it is one of my things. I used to teach that in a customer service course that I did years ago with an organization. And what the flip side of that is, and this is what a lot of people forget and they miss when they talk about communication, is the preferences that people have.
Yeah.
And when your communication is not resonant, people will latch on to the part that they are most inclined to latch onto. There will be some people that will listen to your words, although it's a small percentage. That person, you said that you cared about me, even though you were looking at your watch when you said it, right? They'll latch on to that. It's a small percentage. Other people will be focused on how you said it. The vast majority of people will be looking at your body language, what you were doing when you said it. And so in order for people to really, and that's not that's not the best percentage, right? When you're saying stuff and it's not resonant, and you have like a small percentage that are going to believe what you say because you said it. You want everyone to believe what you say. So when you combine those things, when the words, tone, and body language all match, it creates a sense of credibility. for people, and they can hold on to that. When you show that you care, when someone's talking to you and you turn to face them, right, and you moderate your tone of voice so you're not sounding like, I was talking to a young teenager the other day, and 15 years old, and how they can be when they're at that hormonal Hulk. It comes out and they say stuff, and I told her, I said, if you can put "you dummy" at the end of the sentence, you probably should apologize. The way you said it, right? So it's like, it's right over there, you dummy, right? If it was, so it's like, I wasn't being rude, but you sounded rude,
Right.
So it's like, really think about how you say stuff, and when you're that age, you're putting that stuff together. So I made a joke out of it, but that holds true for us as adults.
True.
If you can put "you dummy" after the end of that sentence, and it's still in, then you probably, should dial it back or apologize. And that's, I work with a lot of leaders that were great people, and I don't want, and because, usually when we talk about this, I know it sounds like we're complaining, but we're not. Great people, really great intentions, but sometimes they weren't really dialed into how they were communicating. And sometimes I would go back and be like, hey, you remember earlier today when we were talking and you said such and such to the team? It really sounded like you're upset, and that's what they're talking about right now. And I knew that they weren't upset. I knew they had other stuff going on, because I'm that kind of person. I'll go and talk to the person if they're my boss. But some people don't. There are cultural things that may prevent people from doing that. So it's really about being, we're talking about being self-aware, and this is what's funny, right? Think about our first meeting. If I look at you, I see you making it. If I wasn't self-aware of how I sometimes come across to people, right, we wouldn't be having this discussion. We wouldn't have a partnership. We wouldn't be on this show together, because I've had those lessons. People have sat me down and said, look, sometimes you kind of come across like a know-it-all, and you need to dial it back. I've had those discussions, and then you become self-aware. You're like, oh, how do I sound right now?
Yeah. I think the last thing I want to share as a part of this, and sort of the lessons out of this experience, is my awareness around, and I'm not going to call it, it's not imposter syndrome. But certainly there are, I have a moment there. It doesn't last very long. In the past, it's lasted much longer. Had been, in some instances, debilitating, and I hadn't followed through with something. I'm not going to say I've mastered it, but I'm aware enough of the voices that still have a little bit of space.
Careful now.
Still have a little bit of space in my head. And so here's the thing. I'm aware enough to know that they're still there. And when the initial inquiry about doing this event came, I had a moment where I was like, can I do this? Right? And particularly after I learned what it was they wanted, as opposed to my initial interpretation of what I thought they wanted, right? The initial interpretation, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Why not? As we started having conversations, right? I'm having interaction with, at that time, potential client about what it is they wanted. And I was like, can I do that? Right? Is that something I can do? And then as we talked about it more, and I thought about it, I was like, absolutely, you do this every single day, right? But if I didn't have some self-awareness around that, that there is a propensity for me to have that doubt, and to be okay with asking questions. And there was a moment where they said something that I was like, that's not what I thought this was. Right. And then in my head, we're in the middle of a call. In my head, I'm running through, can I do this? Can I do this? And it's like, just ask some questions. Just ask some questions. And as I asked the questions and got clarity, and it became, yes, yeah, absolutely, you can do this. So I share this to say, again, every experience is a learning opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to learn, to grow. I share this because you don't have to know everything, right? You're not expected to know everything. And you have to be okay with asking questions so that you can get the clarity that you need in order to make the right decisions, the most appropriate decisions, to have the information that you need in order to make the decisions that you need to make to move on, for the decisions that will serve you ultimately and where you're going. And once I got past that moment where it's like, okay, now you're very clear about what they want and you're clear that you can deliver this, now it's time to execute, right? And I didn't have any thoughts about that after. So if you have voices, which most of us do,
hopefully they have the same name.
if you have voices, and most of us do, and hopefully they are, good voices. They're usually they're voices that are trying to protect you. They're trying to help you, right? You recognize that that's what's going on, right? Ask the questions that you need to ask in order to get where you need to go. The other thing is, and this is something, a strategy that I use with my clients who have this, the majority of my clients, not all are or have been, are women, right? They're high achieving women, high performance women, lawyers, and, other professionals. They do have imposter syndrome. They do have moments where they are doubting themselves, right? To respond to that voice, to respond to those doubts, not in your head. Don't tit for tat in your head. Respond, doesn't sound maybe crazy, but respond to that voice in your head out loud with the truth of the matter, right? With the experiences that you have that are the objective evidence that whatever that voice is saying is not true, right? And the more you can do that, the faint, I will say fainter that voice becomes, because the voice is wrong. The voice is wrong. And if by chance the voice isn't wrong today, start to take actions that will make the voice wrong.
There's so many things. I know we're getting close to the wrap up of the show, but there's so many things with that. You're absolutely right. That voice is created to help you because something happened when you were younger, and now it's keeping you from venturing too far, or so that you don't embarrass yourself or get hurt. That's fine, but that doesn't really serve you when you get older. When you get older and you're out there, you need to take some reasonable risk. If you want to progress, even going back to school is a risk, right? So that's one thing, and the other thing is, when you have these things, and you were great, you were talking, inside your head when you were having these folks, and you set it aside and you ask the question. It's also okay to clarify things, because sometimes people don't have it right. And, like I know that from working as a musician, and I'd work with directors that would say, can you take that down an octave? And I'd be like, well, I play the bass, it's already down 2. So do you mean turn the volume down? right?
Right.
It's okay to ask the question that clarifies the situation, and they'd be like, yes, it's too loud. Okay, and that's fine. But and of course, not saying it the way I said it. I made a joke here, but I was, you want to be pleasant when you do that, because sometimes people don't know, and not
Right.
everybody's an expert. They're calling you because you're the expert. They're not going to have all the terms and terminology that you have. So it's okay to ask the question that gives clarity and to clarify for them. It's
Yes,
okay to do that.
absolutely. Absolutely. So we have arrived at the end of our time together. Couple of things that I want to share. Um, One is, and I mentioned this at the beginning, that we have a book club. And this month we are reading Decisive by Dan and Chip Heath. Dan and Chip Heath. Our discussion on that will be on July 27th, Thursday, July 20, well, next month, Thursday, July 27th.
Mm-hmm.
Thursday, July 27th is the fourth Thursday in July. And so want to give you a heads up on that. If you want to get the book to read it, physical book, Kindle, or Audible, and listen to it, Decisive by Dan and Chip Heath. So plan to read it and then join us for that discussion. And then, well, speaking of books, Robert and I have a book that's launching, and I'm going to share here. It's called The Joy of Work. The Joy of Work. There you are. That's the cover. And it is launching on July 11th. We invite you to get your copy then. You can order it on Kindle for, I think, the grand total of $1.99, or you could get the physical book for, I think, $15. We would love for you to get that. We are going to talk about this book at some point in the month of July, and because it's what we do, right? We are talking to you about leadership in pursuit of helping you not only enjoy your work, your people enjoy their work, but when people enjoy their work, when the employees enjoy your work, your bottom line improves, right? Your leadership improves, their productivity improves. What's not to like about that? So again, The Joy of Work, coming soon. Robert is a co-author as part of this collaboration effort, and we want to share that with you. So Robert, if someone wanted to connect with you, to work with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, they could reach out to me at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or you can just go to my website. You go to my website. I do have a contact form you can fill out, and tell me what's vexing you. we can we can have. I've been watching a lot of old world shows. We can have a conversation, discovery call, and we can discuss the possibility of working together. I love working with people that have those really complex, gnarly issues. Really work with people on their leadership presence and making their teams more effective. So if that's something that you would like to talk about, please reach out to me.
Absolutely. And if you want to connect with me, you can reach out at shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site. There I have a couple of ebooks. My gift to you, take advantage of that opportunity. And you can also connect with me there if you are interested in having a discovery call and seeing whether or not we would be a good match. You can also use that avenue if you want to talk to Robert and I about doing any work, training or consulting work with your organization. You can reach out to either of us for that. So with that, we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. You can Find us here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. Again, talking all things leadership. And until next time, pay attention. Be self-aware. Ask some questions. It's okay. It's okay. You're going to be fine. But knowing yourself is the best path to you being the best leader that you can be. So be self-aware and take care.
Bye now.